Hello everyone. Welcome to our monthly study intensive. We continue to enjoy reading Avatamsaka Sūtra and counting from the beginning, starting from the series on Avatamsaka Sūtra. This is actually lecture number 12. Today, during this monthly study intensive, I'm going to go through 3 sessions. So this is session 1 out of the 3, and as a total count, this is lecture 12. I hope you are all reading Avatamsaka Sūtra by yourself instead of just relying on everything on me. I hope this is not just me reading Avatamsaka Sūtra and talking about something that doesn't really make sense. For many of us, Avatamsaka Sutra is quite new because we are more familiar with, other sutras. If it is Mahayana sutras, it is like Prajnaparamita sutras. We are all very familiar with Heart Sutra, but many of us did study a little longer version of Prajnaparamita sutras. And of course, as a Soto school practitioner, we are very familiar with the Lotus Sutra as well, but not so much about Avatamsaka Sutra. And yes, Avatamsaka Sutra is quite different from other sutras, so it kind of tosses you off from the beginning, I think. And also it has a very characteristic way of describing Dharma, and particularly what's really different to us is how they depict Dharma is so beautiful. Many of us are very familiar with those tales described in Pali Canon, and many of those tales sound, kind of heady, and also if it is life stories, it's always a little gloomy, don't you think? There are lots more sad stories and stories of the tragic events of life. So we tend to start to kind of establish these habits to deal with the Buddhist texts with a little bit like a kind of with seriousness and with a little bit of a grimace. And then when we encounter something like Avatamsaka Sūtra, which is so like much joy and pleasure and also beauty, it's a little bit of a, requires some sort of adjustment, I think. So I like to kind of go through a very quick recap from the beginning for those of you who are a little being kind of tossed off from this difference of Avatamsaka Sutra from the other sutras you are familiar with, and also getting a little confused. So to start with, what comes to my mind first is that Uchiyama Roshi tells this story from time to time in those books and also recordings in my library. This is when he was still a younger man, and then started to get into Zen practice, and then earlier years of under the guidance of Sawaki Roshi, and he goes into sesshin. And then by that time he's quite familiar with reading Shōbo Genzo Zuimonki. In Zuimonki, he finds this section about Dogen's talking about we don't get enlightened not by head, but we get enlightened by body. I don't know if my translation is accurate, but what Dogen's talking about is you don't think about Dharma, but you really, learn, study, experience, experiment the teaching with this body, with this body and mind, with this action. So therefore, Uchiyama Roshi says, I see, I get it. So that means during the session, I don't think, I am not going to think, I'm just going to just sit. And that was the earlier, resolution of Uchiyama Roshi. It's very interesting to me that it is really so true. I think some sutras like Avatamsaka Sūtra, if you're just trying to understand what they are talking about in this sutra, you get more and more and more confused about it. But we always have to come back to the number one, first step, the principle of Buddha's teaching. Principle of Buddha's teaching is that, so in short, if we say what Buddha's teaching about, in just one word, he's teaching about interdependent origination. Buddhism has nothing to do with anything else but what this is about and how I, as a human being, to behave in this. And then, so this is really about description of what this is, that of course includes what this is, and then how this, as a human being, should behave in it. And in Gautama Buddha's word, it is described as innensho. I think the best translation would be our teacher Okumura Roshi's translation, interdependent origination. Thich Nhat Hanh translates this as inter-be. So in another word, everything appears to exist due to the connections, due to the causes and the conditions, and then everything disappears due to the conditions and relations, causes and conditions and relations. So that's just the simplest way of talking about what the Buddha taught. Yes, this is actually simple to say that, but it is kind of difficult to understand it. And of course, ever since Gautama Buddha's time and Gautama Buddha's direct students' time, it was really regarded to kind of very difficult to understand. So therefore, there are quite lots of different way of tackling on this teaching, and also in the end, it started to make a birth to some sort of diverse way of understanding Buddha's teaching. And then several hundred years after Gautama Buddha's death, it became a little too much into stagnated, almost like a misunderstood way. So therefore, both within from a Buddhist community and also outside of the community, who is basically lay community, in collaboration, they are starting to arise the group of the people who are trying to kind of reform how to explain, how to understand Gautama Buddha's original principle, way of teaching, what this is and how to be. And then that, retrospectively, we call it as Mahayana Buddhism. And then the sutra we are reading, Avatamsaka Sūtra, is one of the best examples of Mahayana Buddhism. So, setting that, what is the difference between those stagnated one and then what Mahayana Buddhism actually counter-responded? What is the difference? I like to show you something on the shared screen. Hold on. Excuse me. Oh, okay. I think this works. I think what happened was, as a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about this, what happened and what changed and what was the problem during the time of ancient Buddhism and then transition to Mahayana Buddhism in other series. particularly in ancient Buddhism series and also a few other series on Dogen's teaching. So I'm going to be very succinct at this time because this lecture series is already ongoing up to 12. So many of you who have been following from the lecture 1, you don't need this explanation. But just in case, if you start to come to the point of getting a little confused, I just want to kind of readjust your route, so to speak. So for instance, what happened was, after Gautama Buddha dies, the teaching started to be more focused on how I understand it. So in another word, this is the understanding of innensho, interdependent origination, from my point of view. And then they are starting to focus on some expressions Gautama Buddha left, such as, this is the typical one, mujo and ku and muga. Mujo is impermanence. Oops, sorry, there's a misspelling here. Impermanence, and ku is Sino-Japanese translation of dukkha. And as you remember, dukkha is often translated as a pain and suffering, but it is probably easier or better to understand the origin of the word dukkha. Actually means the type of the gap you feel as soon as you set up this static sense of I. In another word, as soon as I start to say, I do this, I think, I see this, etc., etc. And then I'm going to establish some sort of separation between I versus things outside. And of course, things outside never really moves around in the way I want. And for instance, if this is your child, you have your own wish to have your child this way. But very often, it doesn't happen that way. Or you want your, economy, home economy being this way. But many things happen in the society. It never really works that way. Sometimes it works better, but most of the time, it doesn't work in the way you wanted it. And that sense of gap is called dukkha. So often, it is really best to say suffering, sense of suffering. But the sense of suffering is the gap between sense of static self and the things outside of you, or things you set out outside of you. And another portion is muga. Muga is anatman. In other words, in this interdependent origination, the teaching of interbe, there's not one single thing that is composed and compounded and then statically remains as it is forever. Very often it's quite short. Including ourselves, we say, well, we have long 80 years or 100 years of life, but in, from the aspect of other being, our life is quite short. Yeah? And then, so therefore, there's not one single static thing. So that is called anatman. Very often it is translated as no self, or no independent self, or no static self. But as we really start to develop our deeper understanding and deeper practice through our meditation practice and also studying what exactly interdependent origination is, what happens is, I think probably the best way to describe would be, we really start to recognize my own being is not just my own being. Everything I think I am is really supported by everything else. And it's always really related with everything. I think the best example, particularly from the teachers from our lineage, Sawaki Roshi, Uchiyama Roshi often talks about, for instance, when you are sleeping, you are completely unaware, but heart is still pounding, beating, and then you are still continue to breathe. And then when you wake up, you are still alive. And what is this? Why is that? That is because our life itself is completely supported by entire universe. This really includes everything, not just about the food, water you drink, but also everything to do with, well, let's say gravity. And if it is gravity, it is really about distance between Earth and the Sun, and how Earth turns in certain particular pace, etc., etc. Without any of those, we are not really existing how we are. So, in another word, we really start to see one way, if we just see this reality from always from my side, yes, everything feels impermanent. But at the same time, if you really start to develop this really deep sense of we are connected with everything. In another word, my life is connected with the entire universe. And then, in another word, my life and death are also completely related with the entirety. And then this sense of I, if I see it from my side, it is impermanent. But as a matter of fact, if I don't see it from my side, it is eternity. So another portion is, let's say when something like illness happens, currently I'm having a really bad issue with my back, and I will most possibly have to go through some sort of medical leave and then surgery and etc., etc. But interesting portion about this is, if I see it from my point of view, it's just physical suffering. But at the same time, a very interesting thing happened when I went to see a doctor. My doctor told me, after going through lots of tests, my condition is most possibly genetic. In another word, when he said that, of course it is really accelerated my aging process, but it was very interesting to me because my mother's side, in another word, my female side doesn't have any kind of problem, similar problem. On the other side, my male side, they all died very young. My father died very young. My father's father died very young. And then I really started to see this also means I am the last, result of the centuries and centuries and centuries long of maintaining the same DNA. And then this is just a manifestation of this entire time and space. And so my pain in my back is really related to, I don't know how many generations of the time and space. But then suddenly I really start to have this sense of like opening up this whole space and time. And then also manifesting this at the end of this generations after generation, probably hundreds of thousands of times, at this right moment, which is 2025, and particularly in New York City. And I have a very good doctor, and there's this really high-tech facility of spine surgery and all of that. It's a quite interesting thing to see wow, I am really supported by entire thing, seriously. So in another word, instead of taking this as just a suffering, but if you really see it from a wider perspective, you really start to see, oh, this is actually a great opportunity to learn how this whole thing is about. So in another word, look in the way how you look at it. And of course, without the Buddhist teaching, I probably will never be able to have this, inspiration or a broader aspect coming to me. And then this is not just my physical suffering, but on the other aspect is, yes, physically it is really painful, but at the same time it is such interesting, experience. And I can just go into it with such a sense of curiosity, and I would just blatantly say gratitude. So in another word, taking a look at the thing from just my aspect is suffering, but from the taking a look at from, let's say, Dharma side, it is actually ease. So therefore, as Mahayana Buddhism started to use the type of the word which is quite surprising, it is simply because, of course they took 700 years, but there are generation after generation of really serious, sincere practitioners kept on practicing. So this is a natural evolution or deepening of understanding of the Dharma, and also deepening their practices. So they start to see this, the other aspect of this true reality. And in the same manner, yes, this is an Atman, this is no self. But at the same time, if you really start to feel, I am related and connected with everything, what is that self, what you are calling, So in that sense, you say no self, but at the same time, if we are talking about this entire thing, there is this self you establish, and this self is eternity, and this self is ease. So therefore, Mahayana Buddhism always counterparts when someone says mujo, impermanence, Buddhism always says yes, and at the same time it is eternity. And ancient Buddhism said it's dukkha, suffering. But Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism always counteracts, yes, suffering, but at the same time it's sukha, it is ease. So these are two aspects of one reality. But this really shows the evolution and deepening and clarification of the Dharma as Mahayana Buddhism starts to go in. This is the reason why I think Avatamsaka Sūtra has this such an upbeat, description in comparison to the other older, text. They are really almost intentionally focusing on this side as almost like a counter statement. I think this is very important as we go on to read it. It's very interesting to me that when I study Avatamsaka Sutra, I feel very joyful. Dharma always has that effect, when I feel tired and a little depressed or anxious, I usually like to read the Buddhist text, and then it gives me some sort of a sense of joy and sense of ease, and almost like a solace. But particularly this Avatamsaka Sutra, this upbeat, beautiful, kind of mesmerizing, positive, so to speak, energy is really helpful for me, I think. This is very interesting. And then, as I mentioned, this sutra continues to utilize their very characteristic way of talking about this interdependent origination by utilizing the word one is all is one. And of course, one, for instance, if I use the example, if I see things outside of me, I'm just one. But then if I really start to deepen my meditation practice and clarify understanding what the Buddha teaches, I really start to see, entire universe within myself, or entire universe supporting myself to be here right now, right here. So that is one is all. And then, if I use the same example, I realize all of my generations of history, and I'm sure before one generation before me, before this development of this high-tech technology of medicine, many of this male line of the people must have died with a horrible pain. If this progresses, you will go through a very painful process, and eventually you will lose the ability, ambulatory ability, and that's something I was told from my doctor. So I really think back, and then I don't know how many actually really manifested this, or how many actually lived long enough to manifest this condition, but I really feel everything, entire space and time of this generation of my ancestors lived in my little body. So that is all is one. It's very important for us to not to try to understand the Buddha's teaching just as a theory, or as just a philosophy, or trying to use the head to understand, like heady understanding. As Dogen says, and so Uchiyama Roshi says, it doesn't work that way, because this is about our life. So we always really have to bring this down to our daily practice and daily life itself, and see it through our life and life experience itself. This is very important. And of course, another portion is, so therefore, how I view, how I think is very important, because I tend to create my own view, and then I tend to view the world I set out separate from me, from my own, opinion, projections, discriminations, educational background, cultural background. So therefore, this sutra is very big on saying, be careful, you are creating all of this probably by your mind. So therefore, if you change the mind, or changes this portion of looking at the things so separately from my own need, maybe the world looks differently. And that type of idea is, again, I mentioned this several times, but eventually would give a birth to what we call Yogācāra school, consciousness-only school, which really focuses on, clarifying how this very problematic thing called mind functions. And mind tends to create lots of illusions and mirage, and then kind of distorts our way of looking at life itself. So be very careful. But at the same time, that gives you a way of resolve these issues as well. Because mind can be examined and also tried to see differently. So this is also one of the very important portion. Avatamsaka Sūtra keeps on spouting out as a suggestion. I think so far this is a very brief recap of what we have read and what we have studied from Avatamsaka Sūtra. Now, I hope this kind of clarified your confusion so far, or some kind of hesitation to keep on reading Avatamsaka Sutra. I'm going to click this off. Last time we met for Avatamsaka Sutra, we were actually reading chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the chapter's title is translated as the formation of the worlds. And of course, this world is, well, you know, in translation, many of you are bilingual or multilingual, so you all know this. When you translate something, there's always something added or something is missing. And particularly, you know, Buddhism started from India and went to China and then came to Japan, now coming to America and Europe. And all these 4 areas has a very different cultural background. So therefore, their, how do you say, characteristics or nature of the language itself is so different. So therefore, trying to deliver this Buddha's teaching from one very different culture to another very different culture is very difficult. But at the same time, according to Buddha's own suggestion, we really have to use our own language and try to explain it in our own local language. So there's always a little bit of a challenge. But remember, this sutra, well, all these sutras, all the Buddha's teaching is talking about Buddha Dharma. Buddha Dharma is about how this universe is made, how I am made, and how I should behave, how I should live in this structure or trajectory, shall we say. So I usually like to call this, instead of calling this as the world, I just like to call this what it is, without giving it a name. But you know, in each culture, each time, each place needed some word to call this. And I think easiest way to say is Buddha Dharma. But then of course, Buddha Dharma as it is doesn't give you any images. So let's say in this Avatamsaka Sutra, they like to use the word Dharma world, Dharmakaya. And then to describe it, they place some sort of a personification in this Dharmakaya. There's a Vairochana Buddha. And then Vairochana Buddha, why they chose this Vairochana Buddha, I already explained, because it's a connection with the imagery of the sunlight. But of course, you know, 21st century, someone who live in, let's say, New York City in America, 2025, when I hear the word Vairochana, unless I study it, I don't really get the idea of sunlight. So if it is a sunlight, you really start to see, yes, so therefore it pervades everywhere and it supports everything. So it's anywhere, any place. So you really start to see, oh, okay, that's a really wonderful personification of what it is. But then, of course, you know, translating this and reading it in English, it's very difficult. But I really like to say, when we are calling this the world, is this. Because of this description of, you know, in this in front of the Vairochana, in front of the Bhagava, or in front of the Buddha, many people came from this Buddha land and that Buddha land. Some people actually start to think Avatamsaka Sutra is a very earlier, like 2,700 years before some, you know, astrophysicists started to have the theory about there may be multiple numbers of the universe which we really don't get to see. So maybe this is talking about multiple numbers of the world, multiple numbers of universe? I don't think so. And then, if in the future, like next century or something, if something happens and if you really discover that the multiple universe, and I think multiple universe is also, because I'm a really strong supporter of Buddha's teaching, is interdependent origination. So, but that's not what Avatamsaka Sūtra is talking about. Remember, Buddhism is not science. Science is also something. I am observing something. So therefore, that is from the first step, it is not Buddhism at all. The first step of Buddhism is really starting to observe what this is made. Why are we calling this as I? Is there such a thing I? Is there such a thing that I observe something outside? So yes, currently, some sort of information that we hear from the scientific side seems to match with what Gautama Buddha is talking about. That's really good, but it doesn't matter to us. We have practiced this Buddha's teaching for century and century and century, and this is how we have decided we are going to trust in this and we are going to live in this way. And then, yeah, it's really wonderful. Some scientists saying, wow, there's such a synchronicity from what we discovered. Good for them. But it is not science. So, all of us need some kind of references, and particularly Buddhism is so new to the Westerners. And then currently, Western God is either money or science. So therefore, they really need that type of references. But please be very careful. If you keep looking at this teaching from scientific knowledge, it's again something to do with your head. So it will never be coming to the point of just as Gautama Buddha, Dogen, and Uchiyama Roshi said, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's section, you will never get enlightened. Enlightened is my translation, but it is really about clarification, verification, I should say. But I do know some people like the word this enlightenment, so I just did it out of my sense of humor. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's move forward. We were reading some lines from page 167 and page 168. What I like to read is, let's see. We are talking about this sense of beauty. Let me start from this last portion of the verse, 167. In some cases, there are ocean of Kshetra is land. This is Buddha land. I think this translator is really keen on not to bring any kind of additional imagery. So this translator really is utilizing this original Sanskrit word, but I just keep reading as a Buddha land. Because to me, it doesn't have any kind of additional imagery. When I say Buddha land in English, in my mind, I'm saying Butsudo, Buddha's land, and then I do feel Buddha's land is here. Buddha's land is where you practice, and Buddha's land is here, and then you make Buddha's land here. During the time of traveling last fall and winter with an Italian group, that was such a wonderful group of people, guided by our dear Dharma brother and sister Doryu-san and Gyoet-san. We went to Enryakuji. Enryakuji is on top of the here is mountain. Here is north of Kyoto. Enryakuji is not just one structure of the temple. It's like a how to say, collection of dozens of temples, and then that whole structure is called Enryakuji. And the Enryakuji in Dogen's time was basically number one Buddhist academia at that time. Most of the people we know, in another word, most of the practice of Buddhism, particularly in the United States, introduced to the United States, Kamakura period born. So therefore we call them as a Kamakura Buddhism. And then Kamakura Buddhism was founded by the people who left Enryakuji. Enryakuji was the head of Tendai school. Dogen was one, and then he opened Soto school. He founded eventually something called Soto school. Yosai or Eisai was also one of those people who left, and he founded Rinzai school. Honen was also one of them. He left and opened Jodoshu, Pure Land School. Shinran was also one of them, and he left and he opened Jodoshinshu, Pure Land Shin School. Nichiren was one of them. He left and he opened Nichiren School, which is quite well known with the recitation practice of the title of Lotus Sutra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And then, of course, the people like Ejo, who studied in Enryakuji, and then left and joined Dogen, and then sustained Dogen's teaching all the way up to us, was also, someone who left Enryakuji. But so much so, it was such a, big influence at that time. So one of our pilgrimage always, includes Enryakuji. And then on that day, it was just a one-day tour. It's really tight to go from the central Kyoto to northern portion of the Kyoto and then climb up to the top of the mountain and visit around the site. But Doryu-san really wanted his students to see the site where Dogen was ordained. In this mountain, there are several villages, towns, so to speak. So in Dogen's time, I think there were 3 centers of the temples. And Dogen lived in slightly farther away from the main center, and his area was called Yogācāra. So therefore, when we go to Enryakuji, we also have to take a bus to get to the Yogācāra. And we ended up taking the last bus of the day. But somehow we made it. And then we came back up, and then there was a temple. And in front of the temple, there's this large stone. Japanese really love to set up some large, beautiful stone in front of somewhere as almost like a ornamentation of the temple. And on this stone, there was an engraving. And this engraving said, "Let us make this place as a Buddha land, Butsudo, together." So we gathered in front of them and we took a picture. And I think one of the pictures I asked Dennis to post on our website is in front of this one. So that is Kshatra. But of course, if you translate this just into land or Buddha land into English, and if someone who really doesn't have that imagery or connection with that imagery, yes, probably it's a little misleading. So that's probably why this translator leaves this word, the Sanskrit word, as it is. But now you know. So I'm going to read this as a land or Buddha land. Okay. In some cases, there are oceans of Buddha land composed of combination of marvelous jewels which are indestructibly solid, and which exists on lotus flowers made of jewels. In some cases, they are composed of pure light, which produces an unknowable number of all kinds of radiant adornment. These abide in the midst of empty space. In some cases, pure light is what constitutes their substance, even as they also exist in dependence on light. Clouds of light create adornments where the bodhisattva travel together to dwell. In some cases, there are oceans of Buddha land produced by power of vows, and this is very interesting to me. Avatamsaka Sūtra keeps on depicting the world so beautifully, but also explains the reason why this beautiful world is composed this way or made this way, because of this causes and conditions created by practitioners' vows and action. And that is really important portion of this Avatamsaka Sūtra. So we are not completely powerless in this trajectory. As a matter of fact, it completely depends on how how my mind views this world. Yes, and I think this is a repeated message from Avatamsaka Sūtra. Next verse says, some of them are composed of many jewels, everywhere emanating radiance from their solar core. Their grounds are adorned with wheels of pearls, and they are full of bodhisattvas. There are Buddha lands composed of the flaming radiance of jewels, which are covered by clouds of flaming light, shining with the extraordinarily marvelous glow of many jewels. These are all encountered because of one's karma. In some cases, they are born from the marvelous marks and have many characteristics adorning their grounds. These may be like crowns which everyone wears or holds. These all arise from transformations produced by Buddha. What exactly are we talking about? Again, we really cannot take this in our thoughts and try to understand by our head. But you keep this and you keep on living, and then you really understand what they're talking about. For instance, I give you a few examples from my own life experiences. I think all of you do know I spent nearly 25 years working for hospices, both in the United States and Japan. And I see, interesting portion is currently there's some sort of uprising of the interests in hospice work. And I think it is really not motivated by kind of proper motivation, shall we say. Because I have met so many people who thinks working in end-of-life care is so powerful and then make them feel powerful. But in reality, it is the type of the daily work you constantly have to deal with the smell of feces and urine and vomit. And very often you have to keep your Vicks under your nose so that you can keep on working, so that you don't really feel like nauseated by the smell. And then I just have to say, death is not pretty. Physically, it's always very awful. It's really quite ugly, shall I say. But at the same time, I think I saw most numbers of beautiful Buddha land in hospice work. So I really understand what this Avatamsaka Sūtra is trying to depict. For instance, let's say, some years ago, I was taking care of this hospice inpatient unit in one of the downtown hospitals. This hospital had this inpatient unit, which used to be a separate hospice unit many years ago, and then it was kind of bought out by this larger medical facility. But then I used to work for this independent hospice, so therefore my job just naturally shifted to taking care of this hospice unit. And they were using this unit only for acute cases, such as pain management somehow on the process of progression of the disease couldn't be made at home or wherever they were living or choose to live for the last portion of their life. And then they had to bring them into this hospital unit so that they can kind of reassess the pain management. So sometimes they were able to reassess and recreate the new pain management system, and they can go back to home. But very often, this was the acute case right before the death. So very often death happened in this hospice unit. One day I was just about to finish all of the rounds and then preparing my medical document. This was kind of late night. I think it was 8 o'clock. Around that time, and then I was in my own office built into this unit, and then I heard the door being knocked, and then I answered, and this young man came in, and he mentioned he comes from this private room which door was closed and they refused anybody to come in. So therefore I didn't know who was inside, and I didn't really get into this room during the round. But he told me the reason he didn't want to have anybody coming in was they didn't want to have a chaplain to come in. And then they had this image of a chaplain being Judeo-Christian, and then the patient who was dying in this room was African-American man who has come from a very religious Southern Baptist family. And when he told his family, basically parents, that he's gay, and then eventually he contracted HIV, and he was dying with end stage of AIDS at this point. And then his mother really condemned him and threw him out and told him he's going to go to hell. And then, but he actually had a really wonderful, active years after he was thrown out of his home as an adult, nearly 10 to 15 years in New York City, having a very good career and surrounded by very nice friends of people. But at this point, he is really towards the end, and he's so agitated, he can't fall asleep. He can't relax, or he can't even fall asleep. The reason is he's so afraid of going to hell. So this friend of his who was sitting at the bedside just overheard, today's chaplain is not from Judeo-Christian background, but Buddhist. And he himself is openly gay. So therefore, he's not going to say anything, critical or discriminating to the friends and also the patient. So he came to me and asked me, is there anything you can do? Well, I often feel I don't know anything. And I think that's a really good thing. But, I'm really willing to go where they are. So therefore, I said, I don't know what to do, but I can, of course, come to you and sit with you and see what happens. So I went, and what happened was this man is really obviously coming towards the end, but he's coming in and out of consciousness. So he can hear, and he can actually respond with facial expressions and the slight movement of the words and slight movement of the hands. And then he's surrounded by about 10 friends. And then they were also discussing about this situation. And then this is around the time all of those conservative people are really sending out this really condemning, message to those people. And so one of those people said, yeah, well, you will be afraid of going to hell, but then you don't want to go to heaven either. Because heaven are the places where all these people who condemned us are supposed to go. And if that's the heaven these people will go, that's a hell for us. So I thought, wow, that's a very good, logic. And then, so I said, so then what is your concept of heaven? Or what is the concept of situation of the heaven, the feeling of the heaven? And then they started to say, well, how about this and how about this? Each one of them started to say. Each one of them said, well, heaven will be a place where you have really nice, sets of friends who's supportive and who's open and listens to you and cares for you, etc., etc. And then how they depicted the heaven, I really started to understand that's how this man actually created in his, life in New York, because he was really, caring person. And so therefore, he also really started to create this really strong sets of the people around him who's really caring for him too. And they're really sitting around him and holding hands with him, each other, and creating this wonderful, friendly, caring situation. So in another word, he's already in the heaven. And then I didn't really have to say this, but just by listening to this, each one of them started to say that. And then that somehow make this man kind of convinced, it's okay, because as it is already heaven. So eventually, I don't know if this is the conversation he has heard, or finally medication kicked in, or probably it's both. But eventually he really started to relax and he started to sleep rather soundly. And within just a matter of 2 days, I think, he died. But he didn't wake up and he didn't show any kind of agitation afterward. So, I think that's the beautiful Buddha land, created in this single room in this, hospice residence, which used to be AIDS ward. Many years before that episode, I do remember how that, hospice unit used to look like. It was really like hell. But within this, hellish realm, you can actually create heaven, heavenly realm. Another thing that comes to me right away by reading this beautiful description in this samsara is that, very often people here are not very informed about how we relate with the society, as a Soto school Buddhist community in Japan, because we don't self-promote. So therefore, many people are often surprised when I take some people from outside of Japan to those nursing homes and hospice unit under even just Soto School's wing. You remember, Soto School is only one of the 13, so there are more and more Buddhist organizations. We have more than 3 dozens of nursing homes, which also is assisted living facilities and also end-of-life care system. Japan has a universal care system, so you don't have to change the insurance, or you don't have to buy any kind of insurance to receive end-of-life care. So all of this happens within just one single organization. So I don't know if I should call in English, standard is assisted living facility, nursing home, rehabilitation center, or hospice, but it's all same. But anyway, we also used to be quite well known as someone who created the largest, one of the largest orphanage. What happened was, you probably do know this, but towards the end of the what we call Pacific War, yes, it's a part of a World War II, but I think most of the Americans and Europeans think World War II is European war. So for many of the people, it ended in spring in 1945. They completely forget Japan was a part of it. So therefore, it was a fight between mostly Japan versus America. And then towards the end, America decided to do unlimited air raids. So therefore, most of the medium-sized to large-sized cities in Japan received really kind of historic size of air raids. For instance, Tokyo's metropolitan area, almost 80 to 90% completely burned down into ashes. It took quite a while for the Japanese, even though Japanese are quite well known to be a survivor and very quick to restore things, but I think they took quite a long time. And what was the most imminent problem was because of this air raid, many parents died. So there was a flood of war orphans living in this, town that burned down into the ashes, and there's nothing to eat and nothing to wear and nowhere to go. And then in those days, Soto school, particularly nuns, went into those areas, completely burned down by air raids, and then started to speak with these orphans. And then eventually convinced one of the large facility in northern side of Japan, which is quite close to Eiheiji and the former Sojiji area, and then made this whole area into quite large orphanage. And then this really helped reducing the numbers of war orphans. And so when I read those episodes, when those Buddhist nuns from Soto school goes into this is really hell. You probably might have seen many of those pictures, but it's a real hell. But inside of this hell, having this smiley face of the nuns and then these rescued children, it's quite beautiful. I don't know what is the standard of the beauty, but of course, the beauty we see is really not about the standard of, I don't know, Parisian fashion show runway or a Vogue magazine cover kind of standard. As a Buddhist practitioner, as your practice deepens, you leave secular sense of standardized value system, and you start to establish a new type of value system, including the value system to call what is beautiful. And I think Avatamsaka Sūtra, particularly in this type of beautiful description of the world, is talking about this. It is possible to find the beauty, or you create the beauty in this messed up Buddha land. And then it really becomes this beautiful Buddha land as your action being the ornamentation of the Buddha land. Another thing that comes to me is, again, this is a recent memory of traveling through Japan with our European Dharma brothers and sisters. Many of them actually insisted to squeeze their very busy itinerary, squeeze the visit to Hiroshima, the Peace Park. As you know, I think this is my personal experience. Whenever I go to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when I visit those sites that is kept as a memorial park. We call this as a peace park and peace museum. Visitors from outside of Japan is mainly Europeans, and I see a lot of French people coming in. I think their awareness, particularly because of their own history of experimentation in the Southern Pacific Ocean, brought lots of protests and also some kind of a tragedy, etc., etc. The awareness is really high. So it was mostly French Dharma brothers and sisters, and also some Italians really wanted to go to Hiroshima. And I have visited both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then I don't know if you are familiar with this, but there's one particular picture which is often among several pictures that almost symbolizes what happened, or the messages of peace. There's one particular picture that really stands out, and this picture is almost all over the place. This picture was taken in Hiroshima, but also it is displayed in Nagasaki's Peace Memorial Museum. It is the picture of a young, probably mid-teen boy holding his baby brother in his back. So therefore, this baby brother is held in this little, like a shoulder bag, like, those baby bag, you hold the baby on the back. And then this young man, probably something like 14, 15 years old, looking at how he is, he's really standing like, how do you say that, to show the respect. How they stand when national flag is, shown. And then what it is, and he himself is also have some level of shows burns on his body, and he's in shorts, and then he has a shirt, but he doesn't have shoes, which also tells you, the viewer of the picture, that he must have walked through those burned ground and then lost the shoes. So in another word, you can immediately tell, yes, this boy looks quite healthy and strong and energetic right now, but he's definitely going to die in just a matter of a week or month because of the radiation he must have gone through. But what it is really strikes us is what he's carrying in his backpack is a dead body of the baby brother. And then you can immediately tell, because this dead brother is darkly burned, and then his head doesn't have any kind of strength to hold the head, so the neck is just bent down, like there's no life anymore. And what he really wanted to do, this picture was taken by somebody who was taking care of the proper cremation site. He didn't want to have his baby brother just to be forlorn in the midst of this, burned down area of the town. But he really wanted to bring him to properly cremated and properly buried, going through, probably there was a volunteer Buddhist priest who was offering ceremony there. So therefore, he's really showing the respect to the other people who are now being cremated, going through this ceremony. This picture has a curious sense of beauty. And of course, really strong sense of message. So therefore, this really almost represents the numbers of pictures. It's quite shocking and quite powerful and strong. But for some reason or another, this, how to say, dignity in the middle of this atrocious tragedy really stands out as a very strong message. So, it was very interesting to me that traveling with this group of the people through Japan, around that time I just started to read and also started to talk about Avatamsaka Sūtra, and then really made me think, so what is this beauty Avatamsaka Sūtra is trying to depict? I also mentioned it is really a good idea not to take this teaching, scientifically, physics and all of that. It is very important to bring this down to our own personal life experiences and see the truth in it. For instance, I'm just about to go through this treatment and surgery and etc. etc. But my condition is, was worsening as I travel, and of course it was really a bad idea. I go through this traveling with a busy schedule, with lots of visits with the temples, with full vows and zazen, and also carrying these heavy bags and suitcases and etc. etc. But I always felt this is quite amazing to learn with my body that everything is connected with everything. Like for instance, when I sneeze or when I blow my nose, it gives me such strong spasm of pain throughout the body, and you really start to see, even sneeze itself, just one sneeze, you can't do it just by sneeze. You can't sneeze by just nose, the whole body sneezes with you, sneezes with the nose. And then when I try to reach something, and then what's actually working is only my arm and hand, but then whole body really hurts, because I then notice just extending my hand and arm to the high above, to do so, my whole body has to really, support it. Then you really start to see, wow, this is really like one is all is one. Even just one little movement you make, 50 trillions of cells that consists of me is working together. That's just awesome. I think this is this, like vastness and awesomeness the Avatamsaka Sūtra is really trying to depict. It has nothing to do with are we going to discover this God particle or not in 10 years or 20 years. You don't have to read those, scientific reports, and you don't have to wait until 10 years and 20 years now. The truth that's depicted in Avatamsaka Sūtra is right here, right with you, in your body, with you, with your sneeze, with your coughing. One of those days, I was starting to feel really paralyzed below my, like my legs and stuff, below my sacrum area. And then it also happens when I have to sit for a little while. So standing up after sitting a little while on a chair is starting to become a little bit the problem. So one day, actually it happened here. One day I tried to stand up, and then I fell onto, without being able to hold myself. My legs were not able to hold myself. So therefore I fell inclined in front of me toward my table. And on that table there was this beautiful lamp, which actually Paul did a major search for this lamp, and then found this lamp in the way, exactly what I need for the lamp. And then it was quite expensive. But unfortunately, I fell right into the lamp. And what happened was the lamp fell onto the floor and then cracked one piece, just one little piece of it. But because of this one little piece, the entire, it's quite a large, lamp, didn't work anymore. It was quite amazing. So this one little piece is working so hard and sincerely taking care of this role so that this whole thing functions well. But the whole thing does not function if this one little piece is missing. This whole thing about this one is all and all is one. I am a one of this all. Each one of you is one is this all. And this imagery, this Kengon theology depicts it's quite amazing. It's a huge net, and this net is made of many of those knots. But if you pick one knot, the entire net moves. That's the image they are trying to depict by Indra's net. You have really seen some Indra's net depiction. If you're familiar with Okumura Roshi's lecture series, due to the restriction, as he only has a erase board and a marker, when he talks about Indra's net, you have this sense of this net, and there's a dot, and there's a circle. And Okumura Roshi, of course, says, as a matter of fact, I shouldn't write this as circle, but often people have that image. But that image, I hope you really see it as you, instead of some kind of illustration written on the erase board. You are the knot, and then if the knot is pulled up, entire thing is actually pulled up. So it is very important that I function for all, because all is supporting for me to be a part of the knot. So if you really start to see all is supporting this little knot, then you really start to feel, then instead of I functions for this me first, instead, why don't I keep on functioning for all? So in another word, your idea shift, if it's just simply said from me-centered to the other centers, because now you don't have a partition between me versus others. Me are others, others are me. Of course, it's not the same thing. So, but at the same time, it's not a different thing. And this is why we say Buddhism is really about not one, not two. Very often people misunderstand, and Buddhism is talking about oneness. We are not talking about oneness. That's a very shallow understanding. We are talking about a little deeper, more clearer understanding. It is not one, not two-ness. So I think this is, this type of inspiration really is all over the places in your life. Currently, because of my health condition, as a gift for me, as a teaching, I discover more and more, thankfully, to my health condition. So this health condition also turns from dukkha to sukha, as I mentioned at the beginning of this. Well, right now, for instance, in this group of new group, we are really trying to create the website. But of course, it is really my wish to have a website so that people can reach to those teachings entirely for free anytime they want. But I don't really have any kind of a technical skill. So therefore, this website is a collaboration of someone who actually opened this website and actually paying for it, which is Catherine, and who is willing to write the text, which is Michelle, and who actually willing to spend the time to maneuver the designing and then technical issues, which is Dennis. So in another word, it's just one website, but each one of them takes care of its own role. And then from the other people's way, they think, wow, this website looks beautiful. But this beautiful website is really just one is all and all is one situation. All of this is all is one, one is all. We are always in the same type of delusion because of a human being has this really strong sense of I am here solidly. But if you really do step outside of this narrow view, if you take a look at yourself from a distance, not only space but also from time, you do know it's really constantly changing. And then we always feel I am existing as a separately from other things. And also we always feel the sense of I is functioning separately from nose, or arm is existing separately from legs or back, etc., etc. But once we really start to see, I think this is why Sawaki Roshi always says, losing is enlightenment, gaining is delusion. By losing one of the functions, you really start to see everything is really connected. And you really start to see one is all and all is one. It's such incredible teaching from Buddhism. And so therefore, by losing, you really gain clarification. But if you don't lose, and then you just take this for granted all the time, you will never come to that realization. So I think this is really interesting. Well, I actually wanted to show you a koan about this teaching. I'm not sure if I have enough time, but I'm going to start because I have 10 minutes. Currently, I'm trying to revive koan study class, which I really wanted to kind of clarify the confusion among the Buddhist practitioners in America about this, koan. Because many people think koan is some kind of riddle, and then it is the type of the practice Rinzai Zen school does, and by solving those riddles, and then eventually you will be an enlightened person, and you will be a great person. But that's a very narrow understanding of koan. And then Soto school doesn't treat koan like that at all. And then we also have a very, rich tradition of studying koan. So I really wanted to counterpart this hugely spread misconcept about the koan study by counterparting how we study koan in our way. And to do so, I really wanted to start from talking about this book of collection of the koan called Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity. Many of you are Buddhist priests in Soto school, so you already know this, but on the process of you acquiring teaching license from Soto school, you have to go through this ceremony called Hossenshiki, Dharma combat. And you have to be the presenter of the koan, and you have to answer all of those questions from the students surrounding you regarding this koan. And you are supposed to pick one koan, not from the other collection of the koan, but from Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity, because Book of Serenity is our book, not Rinzai School's book. And on the other hand, Blue Cliff Record is Rinzai School's book, and then it is not our book. And then what they intend to do with this collection of the koan goes completely different direction. So therefore, I really like to start to offer these koan study classes. At one point, I came to the point that I need to give a little pause, but I'm going to revise it very soon, and you will be able to see it on our website and YouTube very soon. But as almost like a prep work, I like to toss in those koans from Shoyoroku or koans Dogen uses in his writing from time to time. So this is one of them. And this actually explains almost exactly same style what we've been discussing about in this second section of Avatamsaka Sūtra. The koan is, let me use the shared screen. If you're familiar with the Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity, this is case number 3. Case number 3 is called To-in Seiso. Current English translation is the invitation of the patriarch to Eastern India. With support from most possibly my editor, Michelle, I am trying to redo the translation entirely. So when I offer this koan class, currently I think there are 2 English translations for this book, Book of Serenity. And then most of the time, most of the people are utilizing Thomas Clary's version. And I find a lot of issues in the translation. So I really like to offer our translation to clarify what these koans are talking about. But anyway, in this case, I touched a little bit, so I hope this is clearer for the readers. It starts with always the direction, the editor of this Shoyoroku, which is Wanshi Shogaku, one of the most important historically important leading Soto school teacher, one generation before Nyojo's time. Nyojo, Dogen's teacher in China, studied under him. And both Nyojo and Dogen really admires this man, Wanshi Shogaku. And then introduction says, the state before the beginning of time, a blind turtle heads for the fire. The one phrase specially transmitted outside of doctrine, the lip of a mortar bears flowers. Now tell me, is there any accepting and upholding, reading, reciting in this? This translation is not my translation. This is a currently available translation, so it doesn't mean much, I'm sorry. But the case is this way, and I retranslated. The king of an East Indian country invited the 27th ancestor, Prajnatara, to a feast. The king asked him, why don't you expand the teachings? You probably know this, but when somebody invites us to a meal, this is a tradition ever since Gautama Buddha's time. Almost for return, you have to give Dharma. So you eat first and you teach Dharma. But then in this case, he didn't do that. So therefore, I think there was some kind of strange, awkward silence. And then king finally decided to venture into, excuse me, but you usually, or Buddhist priest usually gives us Dharma for return to the meal. So, but why don't you do that? And then Prajnata said, ancestor said, when I breathe in, the air does not stay in this 5 skandha. Breathing out, the air does not remain still in the outside world. The sutra of thus and this is always turning the Dharma, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of scrolls. what he's talking about is this itself. I'm going to click this now. I'm going to talk about this koan much more in detail once koan study starts. But what they are talking about, this thing itself is already manifestation of Dharma. So in another word, just by the fact that breathing in, breathing out, it's nothing is stagnated. It's constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly re-relating. That itself is the Dharma. Remember what exactly Gautama Buddha taught. What exactly is Buddhist teaching? In short, if you just have to say it with one word, it's interdependent origination. That's what the Buddhist teaching is about. So therefore, by me being breathing, breathing out, so in another word, when you breathe in, it doesn't stagnate here, but it just keeps on moving, and moving out there keeps on merging, keeps on relating, keeps on interrelating, keeps on changing constantly. In another word, this itself constantly expanding the Dharma. It's a beautiful koan, and I think this is Avatamsaka Sūtra. So, yes, I fit into 90 minutes. Good. So we have a coffee break. I think all of us need a little bit of infusion of caffeine to be alert. And we will meet again for the session 2 in 30 minutes. And we will continue to read this chapter 4. And possibly we can move on to next chapter, chapter 5. Okay. Thank you very much. See you in a bit.